Detective Lange, who were the criminalists who ultimately came to the Bundy location on the early morning hours of June 13th, 1994?
Fung and Mazzola.
And what does the initials OIC mean?
Objection paid, relevant.
Overruled.
What does OIC mean?
I don't know.
Are you familiar with a form called the Crime Scene Investigation Checklist?
I believe it's a form that's used by criminalists in the field.
Have you seen that form before?
I probably have.
And with regard to the term search team, OIC name, do you know what that means?
I could only assume it's scientific.
Objection, speculation.
Overruled.
It's a scientific investigation division form. I'm assuming that would be their criminalist search team at a crime scene.
All right, and as between Mazzola and Fung, who was the most experienced, if you know?
I believe Fung.
And were you aware of how many crime scenes before this Mazzola had worked on before this particular case in June 13th, 1994?
Objection, hearsay, relevant.
If he knows.
Overruled, if you know.
Not at that time, no.
Now, you had worked with Fung before this date of June 1994? You knew him?
I knew who he was. I don't recall working any specific cases with him.
And as between Mazzola and Fung, if you know, which was the officer in charge? Which of the two of them were in charge?
I would have said Fung.
All right. May I show him this form, Your Honor, at this point now?
Objection, no foundation.
1039.
You can show it to him.
Thank you.
See if it refreshes any recollection.
Ask you whether or not 1039 refreshes recollection as to which was in charge.
Objection, that was not the question. And there's no need for refreshing recollection as to who was in charge, as detective has indicated he
Overruled.
knows. What was irrelevant, Your Honor?
Overruled.
Do you want my interpretation of this?
No, I
No,
want you to
just
read it
whether
to
or not,
yourself.
whether or not it refreshes your recollection as to which criminalist was in charge.
No.
It does not refresh recollection?
No.
All right. By the way, this particular form, is this the form that you thought it was? It's a criminalist form?
No, it's not.
All right. What is this form then? Crime Scene Investigation Checklist.
This is a form used by Scientific Investigation Division for their purposes.
And that's part of the LAPD?
It's part of the LAPD. It's not a form that I use or am familiar with.
All right. Have you ever seen that form before?
I believe in this case I probably have. Yes, it's in. It should be part of SID's notes.
All right. And as such, as between Fung and Mazzola or Mazzola and Fung, you didn't call either one of them on that particular day, is that right?
No.
A little bit more, so,
Keep going.
but now, all right, there you go. You're not finished. Now, were you present at the Bundy location when the knit cap was taken by someone, by the criminalist presumably, and be booked into evidence?
I don't know if I was there or not.
Do you have any independent recollection of that at all?
No.
Do you remember seeing Fung at that location?
Oh, yes.
You remember seeing Mazzola at the location?
Yes.
Do you remember whether or not at some point Fung was placing items of evidence into a paper bag of some kind?
I don't recall specifically seeing him do that. I recall him being with the glove, and when I examined the glove, and putting it in the bag at that time, but I believe that was in the criminalist wagon in the truck.
All right. talked briefly about this before. You had asked and was assisted, you were assisted by Phillips in calling the coroner's office for the first call. Is that correct?
Yes.
And in your notes that you wrote down, you indicated something about the call being at 7:35, is it? That call was later than 7:35, isn't that correct?
I don't recall writing 7:35.
Well, let's refer to your notes. The crime scene notes, I think it's 054 is what I see. Counsel, the first page, Detective.
0547?
Yes, I-7 is cut off. Do you see at the very top there? It says something about Heath notified. Do you see that?
Yes.
It seems like that was written over. What does that say in your notes?
Foreign investigator Heath notified 0735.
Okay, 0735, that's 7:35 in the morning?
Yes.
And you know now from the reports in this case that the coroner was first called at perhaps 6:49, 6:50 in the morning, is that right?
Something like that, yes.
And that the second call was about 8:08 in the morning, is that correct?
I don't recall, but perhaps, yes.
All right, at the time that you had Phillips call the coroner the first time, did you know that Mr. Goldman and Miss Brown Simpson had died from knife wounds?
The time of the first coroner's notification?
Yes, the one just before 7 o'clock in the morning.
Not for sure, no.
Well, you didn't think they'd been bludgeoned to death, did you?
Didn't appear to be.
And you could see both their bodies, could you not?
Yes.
And you didn't think they'd been shot, did you? At that point?
I couldn't say.
You had no idea at all?
I felt that it could have been a combination of things, certainly. We more or less reserve judgment until the coroner's investigator gets there and we can examine further.
And would you subscribe to the theory that they, in telling the coroner's investigator that we don't know whether these bodies were bludgeoned to death or shot, is that was the state of your mind at that time when the coroner's first call was made shortly before 7 o'clock on June 13th, 1994?
I didn't know.
All right. Did you ever at any time before it was collected ever examine this glove that we've seen depicted at the Bundy location?
Did I examine it?
Yes, sir.
When?
Early that morning, before it was ever collected by anyone.
In the presence of Mr. Fung, yes.
And this is before Fung, did Fung collect it after that, if you know?
I believe it had been collected.
And by collected, what do we mean?
Picked it up. I believe it had been picked up. In fact, what I testified to is I observed it in the truck. He was pointing out to me that there were to be careful of the glove, that there were hairs and fibers on it.
Fung pointed this out for you?
Yes.
Correct. And with regard to that glove, there are Caucasian hairs on that glove, isn't that correct?
I don't know.
You don't know that whether there were Caucasian hairs on that glove?
No.
Were there Caucasian hairs on either of the gloves?
I don't know.
You have no knowledge of that at all?
I've heard that I don't have all...
Not what you heard, just what you know.
How else would he know?
Well, I'm asking what he knows, and he'll have to tell us as the investigator, Your Honor, but not...
All right,
It's not a hearsay.
wait. And he'll have to tell us after lunch.
All right.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take our recess for the noon hour at this time. Please remember my admonitions to you. Don't discuss the case amongst yourselves. Don't form any opinions about the case. Don't allow anybody to communicate with you with regard to the case. Do not conduct any deliberations till the matter has been submitted to you finally. Detective Lange, your excuse ordered back for 1:30. Ladies and gentlemen, 1:30. We're in recess. So, Mr. Cochran, Mr. Bailey, Mr. Cochran, are you prepared to go forward?
I'm prepared to go forward, Your Honor. There's probably at some point I'm going to need Mr. Harris for the Elmo, et cetera, but I can go forward.
All right.
I guess I presume they're all locked out of the...
Well, we have Mr. Fairwell, who could probably assist us.
Yes, so.
All right, let's have
Only if the defense pays for them. Files cost you too much money.
All right, give me back the money for those potato chips.
I take that back.
them to be quiet. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, my apologies to you for the delay in getting started. We had a bomb scare down on the bottom floor, and the sheriffs and the LAPD had to evacuate 2 of the floors. They had to stop all the elevators. This is a day we started out, things were going so well, and naturally something had to happen. So that's the reason for the delay. The building has been secured, it's not a problem, and we're ready to proceed. And as spectators trickle in, there'll be a little more disruption than normal, because normally when we start the court session, nobody's allowed to enter the courtroom. But because of the late start, I'm going to let people sort of wander in on Scout's honor, that they'll be quiet as they do so. All right, Mr. Cochran, you may resume with your cross-examination.
Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, Detective Lange. Over the lunch hour, were you able to find that Bonita Ecuador label, the picture thereof?
I believe it's in evidence. I didn't get it.
You believe it's in evidence where? In this courtroom?
No, I believe it's at Scientific Investigation Division.
All right, do you have a photograph of it?
There's a overall photograph, as I stated, but there's not a close-up photograph. It's not a very good photograph.
And do you have that with you?
No.
All right, and what does this overall photograph show?
It shows looking down on the walkway at the stationary gate to the south, at the south side of the walkway.
And if you saw an overall photograph now, could you point it out for us?
Yes.
Because it's not been marked in this case, has it?
I don't believe so.
All right, let me see if I can find one. You can at least give us an approximation of where this label was found. All right?
Mr. Fairlow, you want to give Mr. Cochran a hand fishing for those exhibits, please? So we don't lose the easel again. Yeah, Mr. Fairlow will give you a hand with the...
Thank you. And we'll step down also, John.
Certainly.
Perhaps we'll just got the now just briefly show put on the board it's plaintiff's 43.
All right, photographers are directed not to take any photographs of this item.
Specifically 43D.
All right, 43D as in David.
D is in David. Oh, here. On 43D, can you show us where this Bonita Ecuador label is found in relationship to the post of the front gate? All right, Your Honor, he's pointing to an area just to the right of the post on the south side of the walkway. Is that right? On the south side of the walkway? It's a little, it's like a little label.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
That's depicted in 43D.
Yes.
All right. Have you seen any other photographs which are clear with regard to that?
No.
Excuse me, Your Honor, with Mr. Fairlow's assistance, we have located one that does actually depict this label. Appears to be a fruit type label, right there. And we can put it on the Elmo and blow it up if you want.
I'll mark this as defendant's next in order, Your Honor.
1047?
1047.
All right, people's, excuse me, defense 1047.
1047. Put it on the Elmo, and then I think everyone can see it. And can you see, let's clear it up first. All right, now, can you see on your monitor?
Yes.
And is that a foot? Is that a man's shoe?
Appears to be that one, yes.
All right, and is that, will you point out for us, or let me ask you this, is the Bonita Ecuador label to the left of that man's left shoe there?
Yes, to the left of the shoe and to the right of the post.
All right, and that's the post on the south side of the walkway at the front gate, is that correct, sir?
At the stationary gate to the south of the walkway, yes.
All right, and that's the location, is that correct?
Yes.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Fairlawn. Your Honor, while we're about it, and we're looking at photographs, let me put People's 48 identification. This now placed Detective Lange, People's 48 and 48A. It's a larger photograph I showed you this morning. I want you to look at the card label 112. What is that?
112 indicates the location of a blood drop.
All right, and can you show us the closest footprint of that drop?
Appears to be footprint here.
All right.
A little tough to tell because of the lighting. Perhaps another one here.
All right. In the foreground, there are some what appear to be footprints.
This appears to be one here.
Now, can you see on that photograph 48A where you say there's a point where the individuals or individual turns toward the building and there are two footprints that are going toward the building? Can you see that depicted from that photograph?
It'd be approximately this area here.
And now you're referring to an area in the center, about the center of 48A, is that correct?
Yes.
And describe for the jury how those footprints, which direction they were pointed to shoot.
The front was more or less pointed towards the left, indicating someone may have been turning around.
All right.
Turning back.
Is that the only place that you see shoe prints pointing toward the particular building?
Yes.
While you're up, sir, with regard to 48, yeah, you recall that there was some berries or some kind of plant material on that back gate as you walked out the walkway there?
Quite a bit of debris, yes.
And was there a tree above that, those berries or whatever?
There are bushes and trees off to the right over there, yes.
All right. With regard to this trash can back here depicted on 48J, is that one of the areas that was searched either for weapons or any kind of bloody clothes or whatever?
Yes.
Does this picture here seek to illuminate or portray that?
Yes.
And so to be clear again, on the right side and the north side of this Jeep Cherokee, that's where some of this change was found, is that correct?
Yes.
So I'm not totally clear, Detective Lange. Did you find 1 dime and 1 penny, or 2 dimes and 2 pennies?
My recollection is 1 dime and 1 penny.
And is that what was booked?
Yes.
Can you look, excuse me, can you look, take a look at your notes in your report and see if there's an indication that there were really 2 dimes and 2 pennies? Look at page 0555.
States 2 dimes and 2 pennies in the driveway north of the Jeep.
And is that what's depicted in that area, 48, is that 48F, I guess it was, near the trash can?
Seems to me there's 1 dime and 1 penny.
Well, what does your report say?
The notes say 2 dimes and 2 pennies.
Well, you wrote that? Is that in your handwriting? Or which is it, 2 dimes and 2 pennies, or 1 dime and 1 penny?
I observed 2 dimes and 2 pennies, if that's what's written there.
All right, that was written contemporaneously with your observation, is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, if you only booked 1 dime and 1 penny, why would you do that?
I didn't book anything. The criminalist collected and booked all those items.
All right,
Detective, can I get you to use the microphone there, please? Thank you.
but this would have been pointed out to the criminalist by you. They did what you'd asked them to do, presumably, is that correct?
That's correct.
And if you saw 2 dimes and 2 pennies, would you ask them to book 2 dimes and 2 pennies?
Certainly.
You wouldn't leave evidence out there, would you?
No.
And this is the same area, however, where near the right front tire of this particular Jeep, this small blue glass plastic heart was located, isn't that right?
That's correct.
And that blue plastic heart, was that also pointed out by you to the criminalist?
I believe so.
And I think that our testimony was it was not booked until August, is that right? August
Yes.
94? Do you know when the dime and penny or dimes and pennies were finally booked?
I'd have to consult the criminalist report.
Do you have that in your report there? Can you do that for us?
Yes.
All right, excuse me, Mr. Cochran, perhaps we could have Mr. Douglas or one of your assistants move that diagram back because it's blocking the view of some of the jurors of Detective
No, I
Lange.
can do it. I can do it.
Right. That's plain.
Look there.
That's plain. Thank you.
Yes, it's in the criminalist report, item 53.
And what does that report indicate?
Dime and a penny totaling 11 cents recovered from the driveway, 6 feet east of the west shed.
Presumably that was what was booked as evidence?
Correct.
What date is that booked?
On 6/15/94.
You saw this on 6/13, is that correct?
Yes.
Now, what, and the plastic heart, do you have the date that was actually booked?
Booked on August 25, 94.
That is the plastic heart.
Yes.
Okay, and if there's not too much trouble, what date was the Bonita, Ecuador label booked?
The June 15th also.
And they were first seen on the 13th, is that correct?
Yes.
And again, your manual calls, the Los Angeles Police Department manual calls for evidence to be booked as soon as possible, isn't that correct?
Under certain guidelines. That is a guide. It's not a hard and fast rule. If there's evidence that's constantly coming in, well, it wouldn't necessarily be booked immediately.
Well, Detective, I understand that it's a guideline, but you're not supposed to carry evidence around with you in your pocket or take it home if you can book it. Isn't that correct?
Generally not.
Okay. As a matter of chain of custody, isn't the best procedure?
The witness obviously has not finished his answer.
Sustained.
Counsel, he's
Do you have more to say, sir?
There are times when evidence would be secured in our office at Robbery Homicide Division.
All right. We're talking about in a usual procedure, if you see evidence at the scene, the best procedure would normally be to secure that evidence, bring it back, and book it, and keep the chain of custody intact. Isn't that correct?
That would be the preferable method unless some other situation existed preventing that.
And that's what your manual has in mind when it talks about booking evidence as soon as possible. Isn't that correct?
As a guide, yes.
And that's where you were trained. Isn't that correct, sir?
Again, yes, as a guide.
Okay. And as a guide, in this case, the sneakers were not booked the same day they were recovered, were they?
They couldn't have been.
All right. And
I think we've gone through this, haven't
right.
we?
I'm moving on, Your Honor. Neither was Mr. Simpson's blood was not booked the same day it was recovered, was it?
The witness had nothing to do with that.
If he knows, Your Honor, he was there.
He wasn't there.
How do we
Were
know
you there?
that?
I was at the Rockingham location later that evening
When the blood was there, wasn't it?
when it was brought by.
Right, with Van Etter, right?
Yes,
All right. And was Fung there at that time?
I believe he was.
Did you ever see Van Etter give that blood to Fung?
No.
Now, that was on June 13, after 5 o'clock in the afternoon, is that correct?
Yes.
And you previously told us that on June 14th, the next day, which would be Tuesday, you were downtown at the SID lab, is that correct?
Yes,
As early as 7 o'clock that morning?
that's correct.
And the blood was booked finally at what time?
Do you know?
Apples and oranges.
Wait.
I know that we have 24 hours to book blood, and I know it was turned over to the criminalist. Aside from that, I don't know anything about it.
You don't know what time it was turned over, actually?
No.
If you looked at your chronological record for June 14th, 1994, would that tend to refresh your recollection?
I can check.
Can you look at that? And look at page 00007.
Okay.
And is that an indication that you were at the SID lab on 6/14/94 at about 7 o'clock in the morning?
Yes.
And this is in your own handwriting?
Yes, it is.
When you talk about conferring with criminalists Matheson and Wong, who's Wong?
Wong is another criminalist who was present.
All right, that's not Fung. Somebody
No.
else?
I don't believe Fung was at that location.
How could you confuse Fong and Wong?
I was just asking, I said that wasn't Fung or Wong. Wong, he has Wong here, and I'm asking if that was not Fung, because I don't see Fung down here. Let me ask another question. Did you indicate earlier that that the blood was turned over to Fung the next morning? Did you indicate that at some point?
Mr. Simpson's blood?
Yes.
I may have indicated that it was by my partner.
All right. And in your notes, I'm just trying to find out whether or not at any time we were at that lab that morning you saw Fung, not Wong, but Fung.
I don't recall seeing him. That's not his normal office. He's out of Northeast Station. I don't recall seeing him there. What I would have done is written down the names of the persons who were present.
All right. Now, what is the basis for your statement that you have to book blood within 24 hours?
You alluded to the manual, and that's in the manual that we have 24 hours in which to book blood.
Doesn't it also say you should book it as absolutely as soon as possible?
I believe this is 24 hours.
Doesn't it say you're supposed to book it as soon as possible, however, though?
Again, in regards to blood, I believe it does say within 24 hours.
All right, does it say it's booked as soon as possible and no later than 24 hours?
As far as blood, I don't believe so. I believe it's 24 hours.
Is it also supposed to be refrigerated as soon as possible, the blood?
From what I understand, that's preferable.
And would it be appropriate to take blood home with you at night and bring it back the next morning?
Take blood home?
Yes, to take a vial of blood home and book it the next morning after you took it, let's say at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, 2:30 in the afternoon on a given day.
I've never heard of that happening. I would not do that, no.
You wouldn't do that?
No.
Now, in the course of your investigation in this case, did you or Detective Payne, under your direction, have occasion to investigate a complaint by Miss Nicole Brown Simpson of annoying phone calls?
I did not.
Relevant.
All right. All right, thank you, counsel. Proceed.
Thank you very much, Your Honor. Now, with regard to, I'd asked you some questions earlier about Faye Resnick. Do you know where Faye Resnick was on the date of June 12th, 1994?
Sustain.
Get up here. In the course of your investigation in this case, did you ever look at the possibility that drugs were a factor in these killings?
Superficially, we looked at the possibility of drugs. However,
You've answered the question. You looked at the possibility of drugs. I asked, did they ever look at the possibility of drugs? He answered that. He said, yes,
You can answer
superficially.
yes or no.
Yes. Did you answer yes, superficially?
yes,
And in that connection, did you look at the background of Faye Resnick between the period of June 3rd, 1994, and June 12th, 1994?
no.
Were you aware that she had moved in with Nicole Brown Simpson at sometime after June 3rd of 1994, on or after June 3rd, 1994? Were you aware of that?
Overruled.
I had heard that.
All right. Were you aware that on or about June 8th, 1994, she was placed in a drug I'm asking if he became aware, Your Honor, if I can finish the question. I'm asking if he became aware in the course...
It's assuming facts that aren't in evidence. Sustain.
You, of course, have read or heard a tape statement taken from Faye Resnick, have you not?
I don't believe I've heard that statement, no.
Have you read or heard a statement taken from Dr. Christian Reichhardt?
I don't believe so.
Do you know where Faye Resnick resided after June 8th, 1994?
No.
You talked with Cora Fishman in connection with your investigation in this case.
I have not personally, no.
But she's one of the witnesses that you've had talked to by other investigators?
She was a non-cooperative witness. We attempted to speak with her several times, yes.
Have you seen a statement from her at this point?
I don't believe there's a statement.
Well, in this superficial investigation you did regarding the possibility of drugs, what did you do?
In any murder, there's always the possibility of drugs.
Can you answer my question? What did you do with regard to your superficial investigation regarding drugs in this case, not any murder?
Overruled. Go ahead and answer the question.
Considered the possibility that drugs may have been involved by looking for evidence of drugs at the scene or becoming aware of any knowledge that the victim might have had something to do with drugs. That's normally something we would do. We had another direction to go. This particular case, we had another direction to go.
And with regard to gathering evidence, sir, you have to go out. Part of being an investigator is to investigate to try to turn up evidence. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
And if you knew that there were individuals who had lived at this residence who might have some bearing on drugs, would it be reasonable for you to go and talk to those individuals, you personally, as the lead investigator?
If you had no other direction to go, and that was the logical sequence of events, yes.
All right, and once you make a decision that there's only one direction to go, then you don't go and look at anything else. Is that correct, sir?
No, that's not the case at all. If there is certain evidence pointing in one direction, you'd be remiss not to follow up on it.
All right,
That's the situation here.
Doesn't that mean you also should follow other evidence also?
If it's available, if there is other evidence, we certainly would.
And did you follow up in this case, the other evidence regarding drugs?
There was no other evidence.
Did you talk to Faye Resnick personally?
I did not.
Did Van Adder talk to her personally?
I believe he interviewed her, yes.
Is that a tape statement?
I believe it is.
Will he be testifying later on this week?
I don't know.
Still your partner?
That's correct.
You've talked to him about his conversation with Faye Resnick, did you not?
Briefly,
Did you talk to anyone else in your superficial examination or investigation regarding the aspect of drugs?
no.
In the course of your investigation, does the Los Angeles Police Department ever use dogs for tracking or maintaining scents in any homicide case that you know about?
I've never heard of that.
You've never done that in the 20-plus years you've been a homicide detective?
Never done it. I've never heard of it.
Now, right before we broke today at lunch, I was asking you about hairs on the gloves. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Do your reports indicate whether or not there were Caucasian hairs on the glove found at Bundy?
The report does indicate Caucasian hair, yes.
All right. Were there any Caucasian hair found on the other glove that was found?
That's my information, yes.
On both gloves?
I believe
Caucasian hairs?
so.
Were there Negroid hairs found on either or both of those gloves? If you recall.
I don't recall.
Forgive me if I asked you this before. With regard to this walkway where the bodies were found, what is the width of that particular walkway? If you can tell us.
Offhand, I believe it's 3 feet 11 inches or 4 feet,
Right at 4 feet?
approximately 4 feet. I
And
believe it
if-
varies.
I'm sorry.
I believe it varies a little bit.
Okay, but somewhere close to 4 feet. Is that a
Yes.
fair statement? If you recall, did your partner, Detective Van Adder, change clothes at all on the afternoon of June 13th, 1994?
I don't recall him changing clothes.
You have no recollection of that?
I don't think he had any clothes to change into.
All right. Were the two of you in separate cars when you left Parker Center?
Yes,
You drove back to Rockingham separately?
that's correct.
The vehicle that Mr. Kalin had parked the curb there at Rockingham in the morning, early morning hours of June 13th, was that a Nissan Z vehicle?
I believe so.
In your report at the Bundy crime scene, I think there's a reference to a dumpster in the alley. Is that dumpster in the alley, do you have any photographs of that, where that was located?
Yeah, I believe there are, yes.
And was that one of the places that were searched for either bloody clothes or weapons or knives or things of that nature?
Yes,
And I presume you didn't find anything in connection with this case, right?
that's correct.
Now, in that connection with regard to knives, you recovered a number of knives that were turned into you in connection with the search or searches done after June 13th, 1994. Is that correct?
Yes.
Did you participate in purchasing a knife yourself?
No.
Now, with regard to Mr. Goldman, did your investigation at any point turn up that he was a young man who worked out regularly, was physically fit?
That's my understanding.
and that in some of the cards that you found in his materials, you saw the card of a personal trainer and a gym that he might have attended also, did you not?
I believe there was one, yes.
And were you able to ascertain how many wounds, if any, he sustained at the time of his demise?
Kind of vague, isn't it? Wounds?
Yes, sure, certainly are. Thank you. Were you able to ascertain how many times Mr. Goldman was stabbed during the incident in which he met his death?
Oh, were you present at the autopsy?
Yes, Your Honor.
Next question.
Were you able to ascertain? Number of
Seems to
stab
me
wounds?
there were 7 or 8 stab wounds.
7 or 8, is that the total number?
As far as stabbing wounds, I believe so.
And were there other wounds?
There were slashing wounds, superficial cuts,
All right,
I
so
believe a contusion,
stab wounds, slashing wounds, contusions. How-
abrasions, contusions to the rear of the hands and fingers.
Altogether, how many wounds were there, if you know, based upon your observation of the autopsy?
As to each abrasion and contusion,
Yes, altogether.
I would have no idea. If you were to count each abrasion and each contusion on each finger and the back of the hand,
I understand.
as far as fatal wounds, I believe there were something like 4 fatal wounds.
Now, in the course of your investigation in this matter, did you at any time ever investigate any relationships with Mr. Goldman may have had to determine whether or not he had any enemies, anything of that nature?
I spoke with a former girlfriend, and there were other interviews by other detectives.
All right, let's talk about what you did. When did you do that?
I don't call specific.
Well, approximately, when did you have this interview?
There's an interview on file. Again, I don't recall. It was, I don't know.
All right, is that the only interview that you conducted, sir?
In
Personally?
regards to a former girlfriend, I believe, yes, the only one I conducted.
Did you talk to any other former friends or present friends?
Personally, I did not.
Did you have occasion to investigate Mr. Goldman's contact with a business called Design Wrap, W-R-A-P?
I did not.
Did anybody on your direction do that?
I would have to look. I don't recall that.
And where would you look?
Much of that investigation initially was conducted by Detective Tippin and Carr, perhaps in their log, perhaps in their book.
All right. Now, at the crime scene, among officers and people who come to a crime scene, eating and drinking are not permitted. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
And officers are trained not to eat and drink at crime scenes. Isn't that correct?
In the specific crime scene, certainly that's correct, yes.
And you testified in this matter, at least earlier, that if you saw someone doing that, you jump on them right away, right?
If I saw them, yes.
All right. And if you saw even anyone from the coroner's office eating or drinking, you would curtail that activity also, wouldn't you?
Yes.
Something that you wouldn't want to have. Is that correct?
If it were outside of the crime scene, I don't have a problem with it. If it were certainly near evidence, certainly near the bodies, yes.
We're talking about inside the crime scene.
That's my same response.
And with regard to someone smoking, you wouldn't allow that either, would you,
Not at the crime scene.
in the crime scene? Now, last week when I asked you, you were sharing with us that you took these sneakers and you put them in the trunk of your car and took them home. Do you recall that?
Yes.
I'd like to show you a video at this point now, if I can, Your Honor.
Yes, we have.
Please.
Cal, let me see you with the court reporter, please. As far as the jury is concerned, we're going to stand in recess now until tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. I need to look at some videotapes out of your presence. Remember my admonitions to you: don't discuss the case amongst yourselves, don't form any opinions about the case, don't let anybody contact or communicate with you with regard to the case, nor are you to perform any deliberations till the matter has been finally submitted to you. All right? We'll see you back here tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. All right, Deputy Magnero, let's take the jury.
Detective Lange, step out there.
Yeah, Mr. Harris, why don't you hold it there?
Hold up.
All right, Detective Lange, tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock?
Yes, John.
Thank you. All right, witness is withdrawn from the courtroom, Mr. Harris.
Yeah, I got additional portion.
Since we have the VCR running at this time, may I inquire of the defense, is there any other videotape that they wish to show the witness? They've alluded to people eating and drinking
Not
and other things already.
Mr. Blasier, take it.
You know, this videotape, I believe, is the one we played on January 24th that's already been marked and is a court exhibit. There was a second videotape we played in connection with the opening that didn't get marked, but it was played. The defense was provided a copy, or the prosecution, of both of those tapes back around the time of opening. Since this excerpt was made, I took all of the tapes of clips that we have, put them all on a 2-volume set, which was provided again to the prosecution, I think on Friday. 2 volumes. It has everything put together. There's a lot of duplication, but it's all there. So they've had this for quite some time. They have it again. They can look at it anytime they want.
Is that-
Those are all the videos that we have up until we recently subpoenaed some more from some television stations. I don't know. We're still waiting for those to come in. But up until a week or so ago, this is everything we have, tapes from all the stations.
You know, I appreciate counsel's invitation to us to look at the videos that he's given us, but we have hours, a number of hours of videos, so we can't anticipate which 10-second segment of the hours of videos they've given us that they intend to present to a witness. But as for this particular video, our objection to this videotape stands. It's irrelevant. What does it prove or disprove?
All right, Mr. Cochran.
I think we've done what the court asked us to do. I think it's clearly impeaching, and door closes. I'd like to show it tomorrow morning. The court recalls his testimony. This is contrary to his testimony. I want to show it and then move on.
Well, if you recall, my concern was that it just abruptly stops at one point and doesn't show him actually drive off. And his testimony is that he put the shoes in the trunk, as I recollect, and then drove from the scene.
Box.
And it appears that he gets into the car, closes the door, and but the car doesn't move. But I have to tell you that given the crush of news photographers and other people, it's unlikely that he would have opened the door and gotten out and done anything other than drive off at that point, preferably driving over some of the reporters there. But, I mean, I can't think that he would get out of that car and do other than drive away. So, any other comment? All right, I'm going to allow the tape.
Thank you.
All right, anything else we need?
As I understand it, Mr. Darden is asking, is any other tapes be shown to this witness? No.
Okay.
All right, how much more do you anticipate, Mr. Cochran?
With Detective Lange?
All right, what's your guess, Ms. Clark, as far as reader rate?
How long was it?
Hour. So we should be able to conclude Detective Lange tomorrow morning?
Then there's recross, so.
For the record, we were given an hour and a half or so of videotaped information just this past Friday, and so the council was aware we object to the introduction of any portion of that videotape, and we would ask that council discuss with us his intention to use any portion of that tape prior to actually presenting it to a witness or flashing it in front of the jury. Okay.
All right, well, the court will view out of the presence of the jury any videotape before it's shown to the jury. All right, anything else, counsel, on this issue? All right, let's move on to the, I'm sorry, Mr. Bailey.
Witness list of last Friday remains constant. You had moved from it up ahead of two others.
All right, so we're still on the schedule that the prosecution has previously provided the defense. Okay. All right, do you have your, is Mr. Hodgman available to discuss our discovery matters with Mr. Scheck? All right. Is he on his way down? Are the elevators operating? All right, Mr. Scheck, my understanding is this is just a matter of making additional samples available for longer periods of time?
There were three matters at issue.
All right, before we, is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, the one thing that I think was of the most immediate concern is there's a courier en route to Washington. I think we had raised that earlier with the court.
Well, let's wait till Mr. Hodgman gets
Right.
here. I just want to know if that's what the issue is.
Did you see the letter?
Yes, I got it faxed to me this afternoon. I read it once. What's our ETA on Mr. Hodgman?